Good evening. This is Bobby Stafford with the Granby Church of Christ, coming to you with our late afternoon Sunday evening lesson. We'll be looking at primarily Job chapter 4 and chapter 6 tonight as we look at that patriarch of old and learn about the trouble with words. We're looking tonight at how powerful our words can be to both encourage or to hurt, and to see from Scripture the impact that our words can have on people, again, for good or for bad. Maybe you've been talking with someone and they say, well, I am not one to gossip, but, and then they gossip. And so we're going to kind of be looking at that tonight from the book of Job, because that's what happens with one of Job's friends, Eliphaz, and his remarks that he makes to Job in our text tonight in Job 4 and 6. And we'll see how inconsistent, contradictory Job's friend is when he talks to Job, and the effect that his words have on Job. And we'll see, I think, how important those words really are, because we have to, kind of as an introduction, we have to, before we jump into Job, we do have to be careful how we speak with people. That doesn't mean, of course, we'll see in a minute from the book of James, that doesn't mean we always have control of our tongue. No one does. Everybody slips with their tongue, but overall, we're going to see this pattern of speaking and what kind of trouble it can cause. In Titus, before we go to Job, we're going to look at some places in the New Testament that deal with this. First of all, we're going to examine Titus chapter 2. And notice what is said to Titus there about words. And of course, Titus had the responsibility of telling others what they needed to hear as a preacher. Titus 2, verses 7 and 8. Paul tells them, in all things showing yourself to be a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing integrity, reverence, incorruptibility, sound speech that cannot be condemned, that one who is an opponent may be ashamed, having nothing evil to say of you. Sound speech. That is healthy speech. That is speech that is good for you and good for other people as well. And so that's what we're looking at, the importance of that, because, again, it can do great good or great evil. In 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 18, the Apostle Peter, in talking about false teachers, which is one of the main themes of 2 Peter, he says in chapter 2, verse 18, for when they speak great swelling words of emptiness, they allure through the lust of the flesh, through lewdness, the ones who have actually escaped from those who live in error. So see, these people were using words, their speech, to draw people away from truth, draw people away from God. And so that's the power of words. They can deceive people into believing something that's not true. They can be dishonest. As Paul told the church at Colossae in Colossians 4:6, our speech needs to be with grace, seasoned with salt. That doesn't mean everything is sugary sweet. It just means that the reason we say it is helpful. It's helpful. So we do need to be careful how we speak to one another. Again, understanding that that's not going to be, or understanding that we will say things we shouldn't because we're not perfect. We're not God. All the words of my mouth are with righteousness. Nothing crooked or perverse is in them. See, that's the way we should be. Proverbs 8:8. One of the longest texts in the Bible about speech is found in James chapter 3. So I'm going to go back there for a minute and point out we don't have really time to read the whole chapter or section. It really goes from verse 2 to verse 12. But notice what he says, first of all, in verse 2 of James chapter 3. For we all stumble in many things. Okay, so James admits right off the bat that Christians sin. They stumble. Everybody does. If anyone does not stumble in word, he's a perfect man, able also to bridle the whole body. And of course, he's saying that no one is able to completely control their tongue. Ever. So we have a responsibility to try to control our tongue, but sometimes we don't. Because again, we're not perfect in any sense. Skipping down, he says, verse 8, James 3, verse 8, but no man can tame the tongue. It's an unruly evil full of deadly poison. So there's our fact, if you will, that first of all, our speech can do great harm or great good, but that no one is able to completely control their tongue. And we need to understand that about other people and about ourselves as well. So what does this have to do with Job? So going back to Job, remember Job had those 3 friends. I guess that's what we'll call them. And in Job chapters 4 through 25, these 3 friends kind of take turns trying to convince Job why all of these bad things happened to him. And he lost family, he lost possessions, he just lost health, and so he really, really was suffering a great deal. And throughout those chapters, we'll see his friends at different times and in different ways saying things like, well, I don't think you are, but in reality you must be. And so that happens with here his friend Eliphaz. And notice when we read here, and let's see, where should we start? Let's Job chapter 4. Start with verse 2. Job chapter 4, verse 2. And this is Eliphaz speaking to Job. If one attempts a word with you, will you become weary? But who can withhold himself from speaking? Surely you've instructed many and you've strengthened weak hands. Your words have upheld him who was stumbling, and you have straightened the feeble knees. But now it comes upon you and you're weary. It touches you and you're troubled. Is not your reverence your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Remember now, whoever perished being innocent. There's well, I don't think you are, but you must be. There's where this comes in at. So remember now, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the upright ever cut off? See, he's saying, if something bad's happening to you, it's because you deserve it and you're bad. Even though you've done all of these wonderful things, you still must be a really bad person. That's what Eliphaz is telling him. Even as I have seen those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. By the blast of God they perish, and by the breath of his anger they're consumed. And so Eliphaz is saying, you have proven yourself. He talks about, you've instructed many people, you've strengthened people, you've upheld people, but it looks like you're a kind man and a godly man, but you're being punished. And we know that only the evil are punished, so you must be evil. See, that's what Eliphaz is saying. He says, yeah, it appears, Job, you're a good man by doing these godly things, teaching and helping and supporting and strengthening. But in reality, you must be a really bad person, Job. Because he's saying, Eliphaz is, well, only the evil get punished. You're being punished, therefore you're evil. And that's what he is suggesting. That's what he's telling Job. Job, you appear to be good, but you must not really be good. We know, Jesus said himself in the Sermon on the Mount, God sends rain on the just and the unjust. Both. If we go to Psalm 73, and this is one of the, I think, the best places in the Bible that deal with this idea that refutes what Eliphaz was saying. And I would encourage you to read Psalm 73 all the way down to verse 12. But notice what some of the things are that he says here in Psalm 73. Psalm 73, verse 3 and following. For I was envious of the boastful when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Okay, notice what, by inspiration, the writer is saying, hey, these people are wicked, they're evil, but they're prospering. See, that completely refutes what Eliphaz was saying. Verse 4, for there are no pangs in their death, but their strength is firm. They're not in trouble as other men, nor are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride serves as their necklace. Violence covers them like a garment. Their eyes bulge with abundance. They have more than heart could wish. They scoff and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walks through the earth. So here by inspiration we're saying the wicked do prosper. All right? Just because someone is doing well and has good health and they're making money, that doesn't mean that God's blessing them, because the wicked people can also prosper and have good health and all of these things. So, see, Eliphaz's logic, his reason, his argument is completely wrong. Good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen to good people. So Eliphaz was, he was accusing Job of doing evil, and was basically saying that, you're foolish. Of course, you might say, well, with friends like that, who needs enemies? And that's kind of true. So Job answers his friend that is criticizing him, and he does it in three different ways. We'll look at those three ways. Job chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Job 6, 1 through 4. Then Job answered and said, oh, that my grief were fully weighed and my calamity laid with it on the scales. Job's talking about justice. For then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore my words have been rash. For the words of the Almighty are within me. My spirit drinks in their poison. The terrors of God are arrayed against me. See, Job was telling his friends here that they should be able to see that he was getting more punishment, more suffering than he deserved. In other words, the punishment didn't fit the crime. That's basically what Job's saying. That's his first defense argument to his friends. He admits that his words may have been rash, like everybody's words are rash at times. But when you weigh it, he talks about justice and being weighed. When you weigh his punishment, his suffering, the things that had gone wrong with him, it was greater punishment than the crime. That's what he's saying. So that was his first logical argument against Eliphaz and his friends. Well, here's the next one, still in chapter 6. Now we're going to look beginning in verse 14. We're going to read 14 and 15 and then skip down to 19. 14 and 15. To him who is afflicted, kindness should be shown by his friend, even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers have dealt deceitfully like a brook, like the streams of the brooks that pass away. Okay, skipping down to 19. The caravans of Tema look. The travelers of Sheba hope for them. They are disappointed because they were confident. They come there and are confused. See, Job explains to his friends here that they had let him down. I mean, that's basically what Job, was saying. Should have been, I've been afflicted, he says. I've been suffering. I've been hurt. He says, kindness should have been shown to me by my friend. So he's saying, by lecturing him and accusing him, they should have been sympathizing with him and helping him through this, supporting him, understanding him. So it seems like his friends were more interested in holding on to their ideas that only good things happen to good people and only bad things happen to bad people, which, as we've seen, is definitely not true. He mentions caravans in that verse 15. In that part of the world, caravans relied on finding water at certain locations, at certain places. And these caravans, they would perish, they would die, on the trail through the desert because they expected to find water at a certain location, but they didn't. No water means they couldn't live. So Job expected help. Job was like those caravans, he was expecting water, he was expecting help and comfort, but didn't get any. Then his third argument or defense, whatever we might want to call it, still in chapter 6, we're going to go back to verses 5 through 7, and then we'll skip closer to the end of the chapter. 6, 5 through 7. Does the wild donkey bray when it has grass, or does the ox low over its fodder? Of course, rhetorical questions. Can flavorless food be eaten without salt, or is there any taste in the white of an egg? My soul refuses to touch them. They are as loathsome food to me. Okay, so keep that in mind. We'll skip down to verse 24. And we'll read 24 and 25. Teach me, and I will hold my tongue. Cause me to understand wherein I have erred. Notice what he says there. How forceful are right words, but what does your arguing prove? I guess you can say a lot of things about Job, but he was clever. Job was clever, and especially at the end of Job, you see him understanding why all of this is happening. But he is a very clever person. So he talks about a wild donkey, talks about an ox, talks about food that's not salted, talks about egg whites. Job, like the ox, like the wild donkey, he was hungry. He was hungry for understanding. He wanted to understand why all this was happening. Just like the animals want food, they want water. Job wanted knowledge and understanding, kind of like those animals. He needed to understand this suffering and the trials that he was going through, just like unsalted food needs salt, and it does. His friends' arguments, weren't helping him at all. They were useless. It was making things worse, and so he ends up there and says, "But what does your arguing prove?" It didn't help him at all. So they were trying to sell him an argument, but he wasn't buying it. He wasn't buying it at all because he knew what they were saying wasn't true. He knew it wasn't. And of course, we understand that Job did suffer horribly, and as you go through Job, you see again, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, by the end, he's He's starting to understand when it's basically between him and God. And then God comes back and starts telling Job, first of all, Job, you're not God. So don't think that you understand me and understand everything. But God started explaining to Job all of these things. And so, of course, by the end of Job, Job understands more. He comprehends things, and God, he is strengthened and he is encouraged. God blesses him more even than he was before. And Job was, he was a patriarch and very wealthy when you look there in the first couple of chapters about how much he had. But God comes back and, after explaining and Job understanding more, God blesses him in a great way. So I guess the point of all this is that Job's friends could have been very, very helpful. They could have helped him with sympathy and understanding, comfort. They could have been there to offer him hope and help, but they didn't. So that goes back to the beginning of our lesson about when we open our mouths, they can do a lot of good or a lot of bad. These friends, when they opened their mouth, did a lot of bad. When God responded to Job and talked to Job, great good came from it. And so I guess that's the lesson we need to take from all this is, are people glad to see us coming, or are they more glad to see us going? Based on what we say and how we say it and the reasons for what we say. Well, thanks for watching, and I appreciate everyone. And Lord willing, we will be here next Sunday evening. Thank you so much.